Hey, it's Miss Casey. Good morning. Happy Thursday. It's almost the weekend. After today, we have a long weekend, which is exciting. All right, so today is Thursday. I'm gonna say good morning to Jack. Hi, Jack. How you doing? And I'm gonna say good morning to Luke. Hi, Luke. I hope you're doing well. All right, so our calendar sentence for today is Thursday, July 23rd, 2020. So today's weather is supposed to be kind of a mix of cloudy, rainy, sunny, some scattered storms in the afternoon. But it is going to be hot. Today we have a high of 89 degrees and a low of 67 degrees. So our dinosaur fact today is many dinosaur skulls had big holes in them that made them both lighter and kept them cool. So I thought that was interesting. All right, so today we are going to read chapters 14 and 15 of Ungifted. All right, hopefully today is one video, unlike yesterday where it was 3. My apologies. The dog was being very fresh. All right, so let's start. So the chapter is called Unsorry, and it's Noah Euclid, IQ 206. For all the 800 million videos on YouTube, you had to figure there were at least another 800 million that never got filmed. YouTube had its conundrums too. A, the best stuff comes when somebody does something awesome, and B, awesomeness is unpredictable, so it isn't practical to have a camera in hand at all times to capture it. Me being the hero of the Valentine dance, for instance. One day, it might be possible to hardwire a person's optic nerve to a tiny memory chip implanted in the base of the skull. You just need a simple internet connection to upload the images to YouTube. With our best minds focused on curing diseases and stuff like that, I wasn't holding my breath. Speaking of the dance, Friday night had not been kind to Tin Man. Oh, the scratches could be buffed out, the dents repaired, and the broken forklift arm reattached again. But the motor that ran the lift mechanism had suffered permanent damage, and Oz said our budget for new materials was exhausted. Abigail was distraught. But if we don't have a lift mechanism, we'll have to withdraw from the competition. This prospect had JC so stressed out that she started talking about South American butterfly migrations. If anyone knew more random facts than me, it was JC. But today it was getting on my nerves. My blunt trauma anterior epistaxis is better than you. Thank you very much. Who cares about your dumb bloody nose? Abigail snapped. I care. I shot back. It really hurt. I didn't see any of you guys single-handedly rescuing Tin Man in the riot. For some reason, I was getting no credit at all for sacrificing my body. If it isn't on YouTube, it might as well never happened. More like you caused the riot, put in Latrell sourly, when you jumped on everybody from the top of the DJ booth. It wasn't a jump, I explained, through clenched teeth. It was a takedown. It was a textbook wrestling move. Chloe turned to Donovan. Your two friends named Daniel, why did they do that? Why would they want to mess with our robot? Donovan shrugged. A lot of kids have an attitude about the gifted program, and those guys definitely have an attitude now that I'm in it. Look at this place. Hardcastle's an ancient ruin compared to here. They've got about 1/16 of the stuff we do. They may call us nerds, but it's pretty cool having your own robot. I didn't agree. A robot wasn't cool. It was just complicated, like the Lego Star Wars Imperial Snow Walker. Consumer Reports said that not even a genius could put one together. They were wrong. I'd already assembled 6. In my opinion, having a robot was a lot less interesting than having a riot. Riots were unforeseeable and chaotic, very YouTube-like. Oz tried everything to get money for a new motor. He requested funds from the athletic budget, but he couldn't convince them that Tin Man was more important than Badminton. He even took apart his own lawnmower in the hope that the engine would be the right size. It wasn't, and now the lawnmower won't go back together again. Latrell has to go to his house to fix it. Couldn't we raise the money? Chloe pleaded. Sell candy bars or something? We can't drop out, Oz shrugged unhappily. There's simply not enough time to set something up like that. The robotics meet is in 3 weeks. Donovan was even quieter than usual during the entire class. Tin Man's outer shell was completely covered with graphics by now, so there was nothing for him to do but drive. And with the lift system inoperable, there was no sense driving the robot anywhere. Finally, when the period was over, he gathered us in the hall. I think I found us a spare motor. Abigail began jumping up and down. What? What? Where? In the custodial office, he explained. It runs one of the floor polishers. You'd know better than me, but I'm pretty sure it'll fit Tin Man. How did you reach that conclusion? I inquired. Did you measure the unit itself, or are you thinking of the size and location of the key components and connections? I guessed, he admitted a little sheepishly. We stared at him in amazement. After all, we were the ones who had created Tin Man, not Donovan. It had taken design, programming, electronics, hydraulics, pneumatics, and mechanical engineering. No guessing. Donovan explained, there are 2 ways it can go. It can either fix it or not fix it. A probability analysis, I mused. He shrugged. I can't say for sure it'll work, but I guarantee that if we don't at least try, that bucket of bolts will have no lift motor. What have we got to lose? Chloe had a practical question. And the custodians are letting us have it? They're always so crabby. Donovan grinned. They're really great guys. He insisted that we had to pick up the engine up immediately, even before going to the cafeteria to eat. We'd all learned to trust Donovan for one reason or another, so we all went along with it. But when we arrived at the custodial office, it was deserted. Where is everybody? I asked. At lunch, Donovan replied. But where's the motor? Abigail persisted. It's in the floor polisher, Donovan exclaimed, producing a screwdriver. Where else? It was all beginning to make sense. The custodians weren't giving us anything. We were taking it. Abigail was furious. We can't steal their motor. It's not their motor, Donovan lectured. It's the school's motor. It's also the school's robot. I'd seen things like this on YouTube, but never could have imagined being a part of it in real life. It took Latrell several tense minutes to dismantle the polisher and remove the engine. Put the cover back on, Donovan instructed. We don't want them to see it's missing. Abigail was practically hysterical. Don't you think they're going to notice when they try to polish the floor? I was the lookout. It was my job to give the code word if I saw one of the custodians coming. Pythagoras, I hissed. Donovan yanked the screwdriver out of Latrell's hand and tossed it out of view while kicking the floor polisher under a workbench. In the same motion, he herded everybody into the supply closet, jammed in after them, and slammed the door. I'd never seen anybody move so fast. It's okay, I called. I was just testing. Donovan came out of the closet and fixed me with twin lasers. Do that again, and they'll be watching your funeral on YouTube. I admired Donovan, but he scared me sometimes. Sneaking back to the robotics lab with our prize was the most exciting experience I could remember, even better than my big takedown at the dance. I knew a lot about the effects of adrenaline on the human body, but that was different than actually feeling my heart pounding against my ribcage. Fear mixed with exhilaration, plus the notion that at any second we could get caught. It was almost as if I hadn't really been alive until Donovan showed up at the academy. Oz was ecstatic. Where did you guys get this? It didn't bother him at all that nobody answered. The polisher's motor was a bit bigger than the broken one. We'll have to reconfigure it to run on battery power, Oz advised, and the extra weight might slow us down a little. But we'll have to get a lot more juice, Donovan put in. We don't need more juice, Abigail pointed out. The task is to pick up inflatable rings that weigh practically nothing. Oz had a different opinion. We had a real problem, and we found a way to solve it. That's what the robotics program is all about. The next day, the floor looked a little dull and neglected, but Tin Man was back online. The rumor started with Kevin Amari, who dropped the bomb in the cafeteria. I overheard Oz telling Mr. Del Rio that they're going to retest Donovan for the academy. Chloe choked on a celery stalk. What? Why? You're kidding, right? Abigail said flatly. It's obvious to everyone that he isn't gifted. They gave him a few weeks to prove himself, and he didn't. He's proved himself in a million different ways, Chloe argued. Because he stole a motor? She retorted. Maybe, I said defiantly. If you give the robotics team a motor, we can do anything with it. But if you ask us to get a motor, we'd all be dead in the water. And what about human growth and development? Chloe demanded. It doesn't matter, Abigail insisted. They can't just keep on letting him flunk. They do it with me, I muttered. I'd love to be retested. I'll show them the true meaning of flunk. Abigail stared me down. Come on. You can't seriously be saying that you don't see any difference between Donovan's situation and your personal weirdness. Your IQ is higher than his by at least a whole person. We need him, I insisted. He's more important than any of us. Please, One of us couldn't learn how to work on a controller or download stupid pictures to put on him. We could do it, I gritted, but we'd do it wrong. It was impossible to explain what I meant. Donovan was a human version of YouTube. Click on him and you might get Einstein eating a banana, or a heisted motor, or a robot driver, or a human growth and development credit. It was like rolling a die with an infinite number of sides. Chloe looked thoughtful. Maybe he'll pass the retest. There was an awkward silence, as if that idea went down like a lead balloon. He's working really hard, she argued. You know, for him. Exactly, Abigail was triumphant. His grades are awful. He might be trying, but what does that mean? That this is the best he can do? You don't have to look so happy about it, I told her. What about his science project? Latrell suggested. He's burning the midnight oil on that. Right, Abigail agreed sarcastically. Googling dog facts and taking pictures of the family pet. Kevin had a suggestion. We could ask Oz to delay the test, at least until after human growth and development, and by then the robotics meet will be done too. Chloe was annoyed. A little selfish, don't you think? Besides, Latrell told him, big-time colleagues bench superstars who are household names because their grade point averages drop below 2.0. He's toast. We're toast, groaned Kevin. If we go to the meet without Donovan, Cold Harbor Spring is going to run all over us again. Not necessarily, Abigail said defiantly. Even she didn't sound convinced. JC seemed to be bursting with something to say, but when we turned to her, she just mumbled, nothing. I was thinking about those subatomic particles that travel faster than light. I guess it doesn't help Donovan to know Einstein was probably wrong. He could study, Chloe suggested, and when snorts of laughter greeted this, she added, we could help him study. Or, I put in thoughtfully, one of us could take the test for him and make sure he passes. Oh, right, scoffed Kevin. Like no one else is going to notice it's the wrong person. The test is on a computer, remember? All we'd have to do is gain remote control of his mouse and change just enough of his answers to put him over the top. Abigail was horrified. That's cheating. Do you know how much trouble you could get in for that? I was intrigued. How much? In my case, they'd probably just take the opportunity to give me extra credit. The whole system was against me. If you get caught doing something like that, Abigail warned, voice rising, it would go on your permanent record. You'd never get into Stanford or MIT with a black mark like that. Really? I asked. Abigail rolled her eyes. For you, they'd just add 20 grand to your scholarship. Chloe shook her head sadly. I feel bad for Donovan. He's a really good person. I got mad at him at the dance, but I know he was only trying to protect me. I wish we could help him, legally. I realized something about Donovan then. We were two sides of the same coin. He was struggling to stay in the gifted program, and I was struggling to get out. Ooh, that was a good chapter. All right, next chapter. Untested. It's Donovan Curtis, IQ 112. Noah Euclid gave Daniel Sanderson a black eye at the dance on Friday night. It happened when Noah did that WrestleMania dive from the DJ's speaker tower. Somehow he must have kicked Sanderson in the face with his mother's red leather boots. I'm sure it was an accident. Noah wouldn't hurt a fly. Technically, it was all my fault. I'm the one who turned Noah on to YouTube, and that's where he discovered professional wrestling. I didn't feel bad, though, because Sanderson totally had it coming. My only regret was that Noah couldn't have gotten Nussbaum with the other foot. Trust me, I didn't hear any of this from the Daniels themselves. I told my parents and Katie that if those guys called or came by, I was officially not at home. But why, Donnie? They're your best friends. I thought they were my best friends when I showed them the robot, I replied. But then they went behind my back and wheeled it into the gym so 1,000 idiots could use it as a punching clown. What do you care about their robot? Katie challenged. I'm the driver, I argued. We're like the Lone Ranger and his horse. Her eyes narrowed. A dummy can work a joystick. What else did you do on the project? Did you help build it? Part of it? She was unconvinced. What part? The exterior, I said stubbornly. You can't even make Kraft dinner, Katie accused. Where would you learn how to build a sophisticated piece of technology like that? It's not about the robot, it's about the Daniels, I insisted. Those guys think they can treat the gifted kids like they don't measure up as humans. You can't push people around in front of a dozen chaperones, so they took it out on Tin Man. I'm not talking to them. Mom respected my wishes, but on Wednesday, Nussbaum took a picture of Sanderson's face on his cell phone and texted it to Katie. She'd always had a soft spot for the Daniels, if you can imagine Katie having a soft spot for anyone. Anyway, when she showed me the picture, I did a double take. Sanderson looked like he'd been hit by a train, not a half-pint YouTube-obsessed genius. What a shiner! His eye wasn't just black, it was purple and yellow and green and a few shades of I didn't even know the names. Noah did that? My sister exclaimed in amazement. He comes across like a dork, but he's got killer moves, and his mom had killer footwear. In the end, my conscience worn out, and I headed over to the Sandersons. If the Daniels were testing my sister, they were really angling for a visit, which meant they probably wanted to apologize. I guess I had to go over there and let them. Sanderson might have been suffering, but it hadn't stopped him from milking his injury for all it was worth. He had Deidre and Heather over there, holding his hand and refreezing ice packs for his poor eye. Nussbaum was on the scene, too, limping a little, just in case there was any sympathy spillover from the girls. If I thought I was going to get an apology, I was mistaken. Instead, everyone started talking about the night of the dance, and that bully. I swear, I had absolutely no idea who they were talking about. The only bullies in that gym had been the Daniels themselves. What bully? I asked finally. You know, said Sanderson, the one who hit me. That bodybuilder in the wrestling outfit. I was blown away. With the red boots? Sanderson gave me a bee-sheeking look. He was determined to prove in front of the girls that he'd been brutalized by a huge monster, and he'd expected me to back him up. He picked the wrong person on the wrong day. Noah Euclid could lose a fight to a spider web. He's 6 inches shorter than you, and he weighs about as much as your cat. He's a black belt in Taekwondo, Deidre spoke up. You guys in the academy may think you're special just because you're smart, but you can't just go around punching people. This Noah delinquent could be kicked out of school for what he did. I laughed. Noah? He couldn't get kicked out of school for murder. The Daniels stuck to their guns, though. Every time they mentioned Noah, he got bigger and meaner and trained by a more secret paramilitary organization. As soon as the girls were gone, though, they offered a little remorse for kidnapping the robot, in a Daniel sort of way. Yeah, I guess it was kind of uncool, Nussbaum murmured. But you should have seen the look on your face. Totally worth it, agreed Sanderson. At least till that little ninja cold-cocked me. And by the way, thanks for nothing for having my back with Heather and Deidre a minute ago. I laughed mirthlessly. You'd better pray they'd never get a look at Noah close up. Sanderson promised darkly. That's quite a crowd you hang with over at the Genius School, Nussbaum observed. You never told us plaid shirt was the normal one. For some reason, that really got to me. You know, a few of those kids are so smart that we're not even smart enough to understand how smart they are. So leave them alone, and definitely leave their robot alone. We were just fooling around, Nussbaum mumbled. We used to know a kid who did stuff like that all the time, a kid named Donovan Curtis. I almost forgave them, but they definitely had a point. What were a few bumps and scrapes on Tin Man compared to the wreckage I'd visited on the Hardcastle gym? They were the same old Daniels. I was the one who was different. Besides, with my big retest coming up, you had to figure I'd be back at Hardcastle Middle School before too long. I was going to need some friends there. I approached the upcoming testing the way a death row inmate approaches the date of his execution, reluctantly and with feet dragging. It was kind of touching how many of my robotics classmates offered to help me study and coach me. With the exception of Abigail, of course, who was planning to relish my failure, everyone seemed to be pulling for me. A lot of it might have been because of Katie, or because I was the person to drive Tin Man at the robotics meet. But I'd like to think some of it was because they'd accepted me as one of them, even though I was so far below them intellectually and that I needed a telescope to see the soles of their shoes. Chloe offered to work with me at least 20 minutes. She was kind of offended that I kept blowing her off. I couldn't make her understand that it was nothing personal. I probably should have just come out and told her point blank that I had even a less chance of comprehending what she knew than I had of passing the test. When I finally caved and let her help me with the math portion, she talked so far over my head that all I could hear was airy whispers, and every time she tried to dumb it down, it became a little harder to understand. When we were done, she looked at me in genuine alarm. Oh wow, Donovan, what are you going to do? Translation: stick a fork in me, I'm done. I shrugged. I'll put in some time tonight. Maybe it'll all click. She wasn't buying it. You need more than a click. You need a miracle. Maybe we should get Noah to tutor you. He'd do it. Any one of us would. I laughed bravely. If I can't understand you, a study session with Noah would make my head explode. Funny, even though Chloe was back to her plaid shirts and baggy jeans, I kept seeing her as she looked all dressed up at the party. The idea of her finding out exactly how smart I wasn't had become kind of sad to me. I even had a plan for cleaning out my locker after school hours so there would be less of a chance her witnessing my disgrace. One day I'd be there. The next day I'd be gone. After a few weeks, maybe somebody would say, "Remember that guy who used to go here for a while? What was his name again?" No one would have the answer except Noah, and he would pretend he didn't. Eventually, all that would remain of my time at the academy would be the faded pictures peeling off of Tin Man, and by then no one would be able to recall who had put them there. On the big day, things were quieter than usual in the robotics lab. Nobody would meet my eyes, not even Oz. As my homeroom teacher and faculty advisor, it had to have been him who recommended me for retesting. He probably felt like an axe murderer this morning. Even Tin Man seemed a little slumped over and depressed, although that might have been the extra weight of the 4-polisher motor. I had one last card to play. I marched up to Oz and placed a thick folder on the teacher's desk. He regarded me questioningly, and I pointed to the title, Chow Chows, a Special Breed. Below it was a large photo of Beatrice, flaked out on her side, looking about 90% comatose. To my long list of regrets, I should add the fact that I had waited to take the picture until she was far too gone to be alert and alive. "My science project," I announced. "Shouldn't this go to Mr. Holman?" he asked. "I thought maybe you could hand it in for me," I explained lamely, since I might miss science today while I'm taking the test. My pathetically desperate Technicolor hope was that he'd see this fabulous project, realize that I was working my butt off, and cancel the retest. But he didn't even open it. "Sure," he said very absently and glanced at his watch. Noah drifted by the decks. "Good picture," he commented. "Interesting idea to use a pregnant dog." The earth lurched. "Pregnant?" I rasped. "Beatrice?" Of course. The young genius pointed out the features that had gotten by me and my entire family. Note the distended belly and the languid posture. Weren't you paying attention in human growth and development when we were compared human pregnancy to those of other mammals? I couldn't even respond. So rocked was I by this news. Wait till Katie got a load of this one. Her tank commander husband was expecting not one blessed event, but two. Brad's sainted mother, who must have let Beatrice run wild, and look what had happened. Later, when the dog started acting funny, Fanny had dumped her on us so she wouldn't have to take the blame. My project, the one that was going to prove I belonged at the academy, didn't mention a single word about pregnancy, so it was all kind of dumb. I snapped shut my folder. I just need to make a few last-minute adjustments. At that moment, the PA system crackled to life. "Mr. Osborne, would you bring Donovan Curtis to the library?" 10 minutes, I pleaded. I don't know if the voice heard me, but the announcement continued. "Immediately, please." That's where it was going to happen, the library. They would sit me down in front of a computer and feed me questions I didn't have the answers to. In the end, it wouldn't matter that my Chow Chow project was a disaster. I wouldn't be in the gifted program much longer. I squared my shoulders to my classmates. "Later, guys," but what I meant was, goodbye. They looked devastated. Even Abigail seemed a lot less happy than I'd expected her to be. Either that or she was holding off on the celebration until I was officially out. The walk to the far side of the building had never seemed shorter. The test will be coming over the internet from the State Department of Education. Oz explained as I took my seat. "Don't be nervous. It's not meant to trick you. It's meant to let you show you what you know." That was not at all comforting. The State Department of Education made me cool my heels. I sat in stiff-necked misery, sweating. The bell rang. Homeroom was over. I heard the sounds of moving feet in the hall. Life was going on for everyone but me. Oz gripped my shoulder. "We're all rooting for you, Donovan." "Thanks," I said in somebody else's voice as he abandoned me to my fate. The first question appeared on the screen. I read it. Over. Once, twice, 3 times. No idea. None. 0. Zilch. Nada. Of course, I had known this was coming, but somehow you always hold out hope. Nobody was perfect. Maybe they'd give me the wrong test, like for 2nd grade remedial. It was possible. But no, this was the real thing. And as I looked into those words and numbers and symbols that meant absolutely nothing to me, I could almost see Dr. Schultz waiting at the front door of Hardcastle Middle School. It wouldn't take long for him to find me there. I felt the icy water that had just surrounded James Donovan in 1912 and the suction of the sinking Titanic pulling him under. James had resisted, but I didn't have the strength. I was going down. There was one final chance. The test was multiple choice. I had a 1 in 5 shot at being right. It wasn't much, but at least it was something. I took hold of the mouse to make my first fatal selection, and then something strange happened. As I moved the pointer towards box B, the small arrow changed direction and traveled on its own to check box C. I stared, thunderstruck. Was there a problem with the computer? Just my luck. On top of all the things that were stacked up against me, I was taking the test at a broken workstation. Although, come to think of it, I was just as capable of getting the wrong answers on my own without any help from a malfunction. I considered changing C to B, but C was just as likely to be correct. So I left it and clicked next. Question 2 seemed to have something to do with chemistry, but again, way out of my league. This time I settled on A because, well, did there have to be a reason? I clicked it, and then it happened again. I lost control of the pointer, it deselected my choice, and immediately checked box E. Then, without any action from me, it hit next, and question 3 appeared. Maybe I wasn't gifted, but I had the brains to know that this was no electronic glitch. There could be only one possible explanation for it. My computer had been hacked. Somebody was taking the test for me. My first reaction was an emotional one. Another human being cared enough to want me to keep me at the academy. Most of my classmates were so wrapped up in their own skills and talents that they barely noticed anybody else existed. Yet someone had noticed me, and this person was going to great lengths and risking big trouble to bail me out. For a second there, my eyes actually filled with tears, and I almost missed my remote angel answering question 3. I would have bet money that I had no friends in this place, but somewhere in this building, or even outside of it, who knows, hunched over a laptop, was the greatest friend I never knew I had. Would the Daniels do something like this for me? Okay, the Daniels couldn't pass this test if an alien microcomputer crash landed inside their skulls. But even if they could, would they go out on a limb for me? I sincerely doubt it. Who was doing it? They were all smart enough, but it took more than smarts. It took guts, and that was in short supply at the academy. It could be even a teacher, Oz or Bevilacqua, trying to prove that the gifted program didn't make mistakes. I noticed the librarian looking at me curiously, so I took hold of the mouse and pretended to be busy at work. By that time, I was on question 11 and cruising. My bewilderment was beginning to morph into relief. My date with Dr. Schultz and the consequences of the Atlas incident had been put on hold. I was dog paddling again. This time, it took a little help. Okay, a lot of help. But I was still afloat, just like James Donovan. The librarian shot me an encouraging smile. What she saw was a student who had all the answers. And I did, except one. Who was doing this for me? All right. Perfect. Well, I hope you guys have a great night, great day. I will see you soon.